I could start way back at the beginning, but I want to start with 3 compliments that were given me, because I find that you have a tendency to live up to the expectations of others. If you don't have built into you as a young person a great sense of self, then you look for the admiration of other people, and you find ways to do that. So you see me standing here today as a former television anchor and fundraiser now, and what I see when I look in the mirror is a person covered with Post-it notes of all of the things that I admire in other people. If I see someone behave in a certain way, if I am led by someone with a great experience and adeptness, I make a note and I stick it on me. I want to be like that. I want to become the best that I see around me. And it's part of William James's philosophy in the early part of the century, when he was writing as the father of psychology, that if we aren't generous, but we would like to be generous, but we find it difficult to be generous, or if we're not courageous, but we want to be courageous, then his admonition to us is simply act as if you are that. Just act as if you are generous. And in time, you become generous. Act as if you are courageous, and you will be eventually courageous. And so what I've been trying to do my whole life is just live up to the expectation that I have for myself based on the behavior of others and the very best in human quality. And sometimes that's goodness. And here are the 3 compliments that I received in my life that have guided me. The first compliment came from my mother at a very early age. And it wasn't really a compliment, but I took it and absorbed it as a compliment. I was that 13-year-old boy who was coming from childhood into adolescence, who was absolutely frightened about what the prospects were for me, because I didn't want to grow up, and I was afraid of growing up and getting away from my family and not knowing what the heck I would do with my life. And I said, "Mom, what am I going to be when I grow up?" And she said the finest and sweetest thing a mother can say. She said, "Honey, it doesn't matter what you do as long as you're as good and kind and generous as your daddy." That has been a burden, because there's no one as good and kind and generous as my father. But I've tried to live up to that expectation, because I think that's a good thing, to be those qualities. And so I've wanted to be that. My brother was 8 years older than me, and I played basketball, and I was playing in a conference game, and he flew in. He was in service, and he flew in a long distance to be at a conference final basketball game, and we played in the game, and I wanted to play very well for him because he'd flown so far to see it, and really I didn't understand why he would do that, because as the 8-year-old big brother, his job in life was to beat me up, so and humiliate me at every chance he got. But he did, in this maturity that he had gained in the service, come back and wanted to see me play. I scored only 2 points in that game, and I was humiliated. I played on a basketball team that had 4 Division I players who would later graduate and play college basketball, and I was a walk-on. And so he picked me up after the game, and we drove back to the house, and he didn't say anything. It was a 1950 Dodge, my mom's car, and he finally I said, "Well," and he said, "Well, you're not very good." And I said, well, you flew 4,000 miles to tell me that? And he said, yeah. He said, those other boys on the team, they're better than you are. And I said, I know that. They all got Division I scholarships, and so I know they are better than me. And he said, yeah, you're not as good as they are. And so we got home, and I got ready to get out of the car, and he grabbed my arm, and he said, I'm not done. He said, you're not as good as they are, but they're not as good as they are if you're not on the floor with them. They're better when you're on the floor with them. When you're out of the game, they're just average basketball players. But when you're on the floor with them, they're better. And I thought, well, maybe that is my job in life. Maybe that is what I'm good at. Maybe I can help other people be better. Maybe I can affect other people around me by encouraging their work and by giving them opportunities and rewarding their excellence and letting them know that they're a part of my life and that they are part of my success. So here I stand today, and Paul's introduction was wonderful, but I'm a product of all of the people who have ever taught me and supported me and modeled wonderful behavior that I wanted to replicate, that I wanted to be like. And it's okay for us as adults to keep looking all the time at great behaviors, and say, I want to be like that when I grow up. Even if we're 50 or 60 years old, we can still say, I want to be like that when I grow up. The other compliment came during the war, and these are all left-handed compliments in essence. Commander came up to me and said, you're not very brave. And I said, I think I know that. And he said, but you're courageous. I went, well, I thought they were the same thing. He said, no, son, they're not. He said, bravery is the act of a fearless individual to take action in the face of that danger. And you will never do that because you're not fearless. He said, but you are courageous because you're scared all the time. But you will still take that action. You act in the face of fear. And I stuck that on me as a post-it note, that's maybe who I am. That, yeah, I'm afraid. I'm afraid to be on television. I'm afraid to sit in front of 1 million people every night and know I'm being judged. But I do it anyway. Because what I'm trying to impart when I'm sitting there is to give you the information that you need to become an informed party in the democracy. My dad used to read the newspaper. Back in the day, maybe some of you here were reading newspapers at a period of time that I'm about to tell you about, but I watched my father do this. This is when there were, even in my small community, there were 2 newspapers. There was a morning newspaper and an afternoon newspaper. And my dad would get up early in the morning, and before he'd go to work, he would read the newspaper, the morning newspaper, cover to cover, every word of it, all the jump pages, even the stories he didn't care about. And then you didn't bother him for an hour after he got home after work because he read the evening newspaper cover to cover. Never understood that because my dad taught Egyptology part-time and he was a galvanizer full-time. And I said, why do you do that? And he said, that's my job. And I said, no, it's not. Your job is, you're a businessman. And he said, no, my job is citizen. And I have got to know what's going on if I'm going to help run this country. And we've all forgotten that. Not all of us, but many of us have forgotten that the object of a Republican form of government, a constitutional democracy, is to have individuals who have an informed opinion so that they can go to the polls and help run the country. That all of the people who we hold in high esteem in public office, in elective office, are really our employees. And they do what we say if we're informed. And so it has, it's always been a frightening thing for me to sometimes tell people unpopular stuff that people would associate with me, where the messenger is slain for the providing of the bad news. And sometimes you just have to read the tough lines, because you know the tough lines are the ones that are going to be the most effective, the ones that are going to help the country become the best. I want to talk about faith, and I want to talk about it as it relates to my great mentor, my father. And I have a very similar faith belief that he had. I asked him one day, and as we think of our fathers, the smartest man in the world, and I said, "Is there a God?" He said, "I haven't got the slightest idea." He said, "I haven't the slightest idea." And I said, "Well, you go to church every Sunday. Do you believe in God?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "That doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to me. You don't know if there is one, but you believe in one." "Why?" He said, "Because I want it to be true. I prefer a world. I prefer a world in which there is a caring goodness. And I'm the one making that decision of whether to believe or not to believe. And I choose to believe in that. That's the alternative. I have no wish to be a part of it. And I'm going to act as if there is a caring God in my life. And I am going to behave as though there is a caring God in my life." And so that's how I operate. I don't proselytize to neophytes. I don't tell people how they should believe, which has given me an understanding of how one goes about working with communities and groups, because everyone comes to the table with a different set of beliefs. And that's allowable. It's not the divisiveness that we face today in our communities, which I would like to find some way to heal, that if you are the other, if you are not like me, if you have a philosophy or a religious belief or a custom or a color or a gender or an ethnology different than me, other from me, I distrust you. You're not like me. You're different from me. We disagree. Therefore, I don't like you. Walter Mondale told me one day that you cannot negotiate ever with the person across the table who you believe is evil. We can't start in that position. We can't start believing that anyone who has an opinion different from us is evil incarnate. Family. Lessons are learned in unusual ways. I have 3 daughters, 36, 35, 34, but when they were 7, 8, and 9, they hated each other and argued constantly. I don't know where they got their mouthiness. I think they got it from their mother, but because they were very close in age, they had to be right all the time. And I said the only smart thing I ever said in my life. I mean, Barbara and I had been trying to get the girls to stop quarreling, and one day I just went upstairs and they were just at the top of their voice yelling at each other, trying to be right. And I said, you have to stop this now. You have to stop this because it doesn't matter who's right. It matters what's right. It doesn't matter who's right, but it matters what's right. And your job, instead of arguing, is to try to discuss among the three of you what is right. Don't try to win the argument. Just try to figure out what the right thing is. And maybe, Ashley, you have a piece that Delta needs, and maybe Lacey has a piece that both of you need, and together we can build an informed opinion by having divergent thought. I've learned a lot from my family of origin, and from the family that I have now and cherish. I can talk to you about friendship, and I won't cover all the F's, but you'll find them as a full part of me. Friendship and fun goes together. I tried to think of what friendship is. Friendship is, to me, is someone who loves you enough to tell you the truth. Not somebody you pal around with, hang around with, and laugh and have a couple of drinks. That's not it. Somebody who has the courage to risk the friendship by telling you a truth you need to hear. A truth about yourself that you're unwilling to face in the mirror. That's the kind of friend I take the risk of being from time to time. To those people only who take that risk with me. I wouldn't do that to casual acquaintances, associates. But if someone wishes friendship, then the cost of that friendship is truth. Nobody has more fun than I do, because I have fun in everything I'm doing. I'm having fun right now. Life's not much worth living unless you're having some fun. And you got to find fun in everything you do. I want to give you, I'm going to close out. I wrote this book, and I don't care if you buy it or anything. It doesn't matter. I think I get 16 cents or something like that. But this book is the armature is basketball, but they're stories. They're just stories of being together and playing together and working together and relying on each other. And you don't have to be a fan of any sport to understand the 10 lessons that I put in the back of this book that I learned. For those people who spent more time with basketballs or baseballs than they did with books, or people who spent more time watching their children play sports, the inordinate amount of time that we're now required to spend with our children on all the traveling teams that they're on, and the big emphasis on the sports. This takes it down a notch. Lesson one is we play on a team. No matter how great our physical and mental gifts, we cannot inbound the ball to ourselves. We cannot initiate even the simplest play without help. Needing someone is not a weakness. It is fundamental to the game and to life. 5 players with dazzling individual skills who do not play as a team will usually lose. Average players who share, cooperate, and play to one another's strengths and who unselfishly work will discover the magic of a total that is greater than the sum of its parts. This is not basketball. This is life. I've just explained to you how you find the best in clubs and community and church and family and government and country. It all applies. Lesson 2, the best statistic is an assist. Not rebounds, not points scored, not home runs hit. It's the assist. Unselfishness is its own reward. Anyone can shoot, lots of people can hit. Few have the strength of character to resist the urge to help themselves into the spotlight and instead focus it on someone else. Lesson 3, losing is a part of winning. No one likes to lose and no one should be asked to, but there can be no wins unless somebody posts a loss. Losses tell us something about ourselves, primarily how we can improve. Avoiding responsibility for one's role in a loss is self-defeating. Blaming others destroys cooperation and lets us avoid the elemental truth that we all need improvement. So accept the responsibility and grow. Lesson 4, games are won at practice. This is important. It sounds like I'm talking about sports. I'm not. Games are won at practice. Anyone who holds back his or her best until the pressure is on will lose. Consistency derives from practice. Consistency derives from practice. Confidence from preparation. Instinct from repetition. In order to be at your best under pressure, you must have prepared at game speed. Lesson 5, control the tempo. Knowing when to step up the pressure and when to slow it down is essential in both basketball and life. It's almost always a mistake to increase the tempo of your game when forced into it by the opposition. So answer pressure with calm. Answer panic with level-headedness. Don't be forced to play someone else's game. Play your own with confidence. Lesson 6, the best advice. The best advice sometimes sounds like criticism. No one likes to be singled out for criticism, especially in a crowd. Our reaction is often anger, denial. Usually it's simply embarrassment. Suffer it. Address the fault. There's little growth until we figure out what we're doing is wrong. Sometimes we figure it out for ourselves. More often, someone else has to point it out for us. Either way, we can use that information to grow. Lesson 7. This is critical. Anticipate. Success rests upon your ability to think ahead. Calculating the array of options others may exercise makes you prepared for anything. A person who thinks 1, even 2 moves or passes ahead will earn more opportunities than a person to whom everything comes as a surprise. Lesson 8, fellowship. Non-gender specific fellowship. I coach girls basketball. I call them fellas. We learn that there is more to the game than performance. We allow our hearts to fill with more than pride. We are drawn together by a common idea. We share the extremes of experience and we begin to play interdependent roles in one another's lives. Not everyone will understand and appreciate us, but we will understand and appreciate each other. Lesson 9, time out. There are times in life and in the game to stop. No points are given for continuing past the point of exhaustion or effectiveness. Timeouts are no admission of failure. Use them effectively to rest and analyze your next move. The smartest timeouts are those called just before it becomes obvious to everyone else that one is needed. Lesson 10, perhaps the most important. Love. You can't simply like what you're doing and do it to its fullest. You cannot demand of yourself dedication unless you love the object of your dedication. And you cannot love something until you have come to respect and appreciate its detail and until you have sacrificed a part of yourself for it. Those are the 10 lessons of life that I live by. I don't know if they're helpful. I don't know if they're useful in any meaningful way in terms of the kind of leadership that you represent in our community. But if you absorb them, and if you find any one of those 10, make a Post-it note and stick it on your forehead. You'll see it when you look in the mirror in the morning. No one else will see it. They'll just see the goodness that comes from you. Thank you very much.